This 3D printing is going to get me into some trouble. All right. Okay, much better. Hats. Let's talk about hats. I'm always looking around for something that I can create to improve just my day-to-day life with my 3D printer. And I realized that I have a lot of hats. And to be honest with you, it's really inconvenient for me to put every single hat on when it's time to wear a hat. Oh. Ah. Milady. So I want to come up with a good way to store the hats, not have them sit on the dresser or sit in the closet or sit. I don't want them to sit. They're not my dog. They're not Jarvis. Good boy, Jarvis. So I wanted this project to be a number of things. Number one, I wanted it to be modular. If part of it breaks, I can just take the broken part out, put a new part in. And B, it's expandable. I can expand and shrink it as needed. Or if I want to organize the hats specifically by like sports team hats, there might be 6. And then company hats, there might be 3. And then fun hat, you know, whatever the separation might be. The point is, I want this thing to be dynamic. That way it can change as I want it to without me having to go reprint it every single time. So I was thinking, and I thought, okay, good place to keep the hats would be in the closet. And not on the shelf in the closet, but hanging in the closet. So we got to figure out a way to hang the hats in the closet. Baseball hats have this little nub on the top of them. If we can kind of capitalize on this and devise a system where we just kind of slot that in, and then the hats can hang off of that. And then we just got to figure out things like spacing and how exactly all the pieces are going to fit together. Because again, this thing is modular. We take all those ideas from our brain and we pop it into the design software. Well, we're going to start with a good old rectangle. And I figured that 2 inches per hat would be a good way to do it. And I elected to put the mounting equipment on the bottom of the rectangle. That's just what made sense to me because the last one of these is going to be the last one to hang. And I wanted the hat to be able to cover the fastener. Now, as far as the fastener goes, originally I wanted it to be sort of a clip, like a buckle, but I print with a plastic called PLA Plus, but it's PLA plastic. PLA plastic is not the most flexible. It's kind of a harder plastic. There are flexible plastics that you can print with that would be a little springier, which honestly was my first thought, was have some sort of springy flap that could just naturally move out of the way and then fall back onto the hat. But I don't have that at my disposal at the moment. What I decided to do was I made a short upper bracket with a hole in it that's ever so slightly larger than the hat nub, nipple, whatever you call it. That way it can grab it, and then I put another longer and curved piece underneath that. That way it's not entirely hanging off of that nub. Then there's another way for it to be kind of supported to help, just a helper hemisphere, if you will. So we've got the nub holder and the helper hemisphere, and we've got about how we want to place it. So instead of doing that clip idea with the bracket, I decided to just use a giant arrow. Now the arrow is not anything indicative of what direction you're supposed to mount them or anything. That was the simplest shape I could think of at the time that would, when long enough, provide the vertical support for the pieces to be able to hang so that it would have enough leverage to not come flying off every time you add or remove a hat. I printed a couple tests. It's a little messy, largely in part because I didn't care. And I also took off the actual hat holder. This was just to test the bracket itself. But all you have to do is pop the 2 pieces together. I made the non-hole arrow ever so slightly smaller than the hole arrow. That way it would fit in a little bit easier. So I did a number of other placement tests, including making sure that there was enough of a gap between the nub holder and the helper hemisphere, and a couple other fitment tests, and we've got our piece put together right here. So we know how we're gonna put the hats on the hanger, but how are we actually going to hang this thing? Well, this is where it being modular is a huge advantage. All I did was I took the base rectangle with the fastener holes already set, and I removed the pieces that hold the hats, and then I created a hoop, a partial hoop, whatever you want to call it. It's half of a donut that I stretched out to make kind of a grabber. Maybe it's a hand. I don't know. It holds the entirety of the thing up on the shirt hanger. That way these can hang off of that, and it all snaps together with the same fastener. So now we just print a whole bunch of these, and way more than this even, and we can print as many as we want. We can print as many of those hooks as we want, and we just start snapping everything together, hang it up in the closet, And boom, now we have a fully dynamic, fully customizable, modular hanging hat hanger that can go right there in the closet. And the beauty of this is if I ever want to move this to, say, the other closet, which has a much thicker rod on it, all I have to do is make a different top bracket, change that out, and then I can hang it off of the bigger hanger thanks to the fact that I've created a new one with a bigger hook. And now when I see Rectangula and I want to greet her in only the most proper way possible, I don't have to look like an idiot and tip all of my hats at once, because most of them will be hanging in the closet. And I can just tip the one singular hat. Still look like an idiot though, that part's a given.